You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Black to Business Podcast. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall, and today's episode is a short and sweet solo episode, and I'm going to be talking about the art of networking and building genuine connections. So I know you've heard that saying, it's not what you know, but who you know. And I just think that couldn't be more true in the world of business. So I believe that networking really goes beyond collecting business cards or just increasing your LinkedIn connections, because that is the biggest thing these days. But it's truly about forming meaningful relationships that can really propel your business forward. Now, let me be real with you, and you probably heard me say this on the podcast. I'm not the most social person, and honestly, networking has really never been my favorite thing. Now, I will say this, I am more so like an ambivert. I'm more introverted than anything and extroverted when I need to be. And honestly, most people who meet me in person, they're probably like, I have to get to know someone. So I'm not like standoffish at all, but I'm probably not going to be the one that's doing the most talking in the room if I don't know people in the room. However, with that being said, I've come to realize how important it is to network, to connect, which is why I'm making an effort to be intentional about it. Because when I first started Black to Business, I remember I attended every networking event I could find. I had to be an extrovert. It just was, I had to force myself. And I think that's the thing about business. Oftentimes people ask me, like, what was the most surprising thing about business? For me, it's the person that you have to become in business. So for me, I probably wasn't the most social, but I knew it was important for me to be social in business. So as I mentioned, when I first started Black to Business, I was attending every networking event I could find. And that was in the early days. So over the years, I've kind of slowed down, and lately I've been getting back into it. And one of the things that I'm discovering is that there is truly an art to it, and you really have to be intentional, especially as your business grows. You cannot be everywhere all the time. So you really have to be intentional. And that's why today I wanted to share a little bit more with you about the importance of networking and sharing with you some of my strategies for making those authentic connections and some of the different ways to network effectively. So I'm going to also talk about this negative connotation associated with networking and how to actually overcome those. And if you're new here, you might not know my style, but I like to break it down. So I like to make sure that you walk away with some actionable steps. So you'll definitely get some insights and strategies to help you actually build genuine connections and to help you really transform your business. So I say take some notes, maybe in your phone, notepad, whatever. And if you're an OG listener, you already know how I do. So let's get into it. So first, let's talk about why networking matters. So networking really can open doors. It can create opportunities, and it can honestly lead to business growth. So according to a lot of studies, networking is crucial for nearly 80% of survival of startups. And I can personally attest to this because when I started Black to Business, as I mentioned before, attending networking events really helped me meet my mentors, find people to collaborate with, and even it helped me land my first sponsor. And these relationships honestly didn't just happen overnight. They were built over time through trust and that mutual support. So back in the early days, when I first moved to New York, I literally had no connections. Like, I'm from a small town in Georgia. It's not like many people leave that small town and they're like, oh, I know some folks in New York. It was not like that at all. So I had no connections. I had nobody that could put me on, and I knew no one. So the only way that I could connect with people was by attending networking events with like-minded individuals. And these events were a lifeline for me. So through them, I began meeting people who invited me to their inner circle events. And I remember regularly meeting up. I always shout out the Brooklyn Public Library. So I remember regularly meeting up with a group at the Brooklyn Public Library. And it was through this group that I really started to discover the resources that the library had. For example, they had free space that I could reserve. And that's actually where the Black to Business podcast started. And that's where I recorded my first podcast episode, my first few episodes. So if you don't know, the Black to Business podcast, I started with, shout out to Tanya Rapley and Marquel Gilchrist. They were two of my first guests. We recorded in the Brooklyn Public Library. Literally, I reserved a room. It was a free space, and I had my little microphone on top of some books. Like, I didn't even have a real stand. And I think at that time, Tanya was on the cover of Black Enterprise. I was just like, I'm going to go big. So shout out to the Brooklyn Public Library, and also shout out to them, to those two, for being my first guests. And so that, I say all that to say that that's where I started the Black to Business podcast. But imagine if I hadn't put myself out there and I hadn't connected with others, I wouldn't have been aware of the resources that were available to me. And even more importantly, one of those people from that very group became one of my first podcast sponsors. So a full circle moment in networking, being intentional about those connections. And I share that story with you to show you how and the impact that networking and building those genuine connections can have. And by putting myself out there and connecting with others, I gain access to resources, to opportunities, and to that support that I wouldn't have found otherwise. So now let's get into some strategies for building those authentic connections, because you're probably thinking, okay, Monique, how can I do this? I don't really know where to start. And first, authenticity is going to be key in all of this. So people can sense when you're being genuine, and they can also tell when you're just trying to use them for a personal gain, because trust me, I have felt that as well. And so I want to give you some practical tips. So first things first is you want to be yourself. Now, what does that look like? So being yourself means like embracing who you are. What are your strengths? And even what are your quirks? It's about showing up as the real you, not a version of yourself that you think others will like. So for instance, if you're naturally introverted, like I was, don't force yourself to be the life of the party. Like I'm okay without being the life of the party. So instead, focus on having meaningful one-on-one conversations. So how do you do that? So reflect on your authentic self first. So take some time to think about who you are and what makes you unique. What are your values? What are your strengths? And understanding these can help you show up more authentically. So for me, speaking of one-on-one conversation, like I thrive. People are like, the way that you're looking at me, I love to give people my undivided attention when I'm talking to them, because I truly value the importance of that moment and being present in that moment. So I feel like that's who I am, and that's how I've grown up to be. So that's authentic to me. And then secondly, I would suggest dressing comfortably. So wearing something that makes you feel comfortable and confident. And this can help you feel more at ease and really be yourself. Like if you're not a heel girl, don't wear heels. Wear your nice flat. Do what feels authentic to you. And next, I would say speak your truth. So when you're discussing your business or your personal experiences, be honest. Share your real challenges and your successes. And I feel like authentic stories resonate more with people, and they create these deeper connections. Like I've gained so many insights from people I just met. They give me so much information about their personal life and how business is really going. And I truly value that. And it makes me want to be even more open. So with that being said, next I would like to say show genuine interest. So showing genuine interest means actively engaging with others, asking those thoughtful questions, and truly listening to their responses. It's about being present in the conversation and valuing the other person's perspective. So how do you do this? Ask open-ended questions. So instead of a yes or no question, ask open-ended questions that encourage the other person to share more about themselves. So for example, You might ask, what inspired you to start your business? Or what challenges are you currently facing? Like, what are you going through, girl? Because I'm going through the same thing. Or how did you deal with this? And you'd be surprised the insights and feedback that others are able to give you. And then you want to make sure that you are listening actively. So pay close attention to what the other person is saying. So nod, maintain that eye contact. I know this is hard for a lot of people, and this is something that I'm working on. I think I'm okay with it, but maintaining the eye contact, nodding and responding thoughtfully. So avoid thinking about what you're going to say next while they're talking. So that is so important to actively listen. And then you want to follow up. So if someone mentions a specific challenge or a project that they're working on, follow up on that later. Send an article that might help them, or simply ask how things are going the next time that you see them. And this shows that you were really listening and that you actually care. And then speaking of caring, offer value. So offering value is about finding ways to help others before asking something in return. And this could be through sharing your knowledge, resources, or connections. So how do you do this? You want to share resources. So if you come across a book or article or a tool that you think could benefit someone that you've met, you want to share it with them. So for example, if someone is struggling with social media marketing, you want to send them a link to a helpful blog post or a tool that you found to be useful. And then another thing is you want to make introductions. If you know someone who could benefit from meeting another person in your network, make that introduction. And this can create opportunities for both parties and show that you are looking out for their best interests. And another thing I would say is offering value could be offering your expertise. So if you have a particular skill or an area of expertise, offer to help someone who could benefit from it. So for example, if you're good at graphic design and you know someone who needs a new logo, offer to help them out. And it doesn't have to be a huge commitment. It can be a small gesture. It can go a long way. So for example, even for me more recently, one of my close friends is an entrepreneur, and they were balancing work and also their business. And I known them for years, and they've been working on this business and kind of like another business, but they recently, unfortunately, lost their job. And I can imagine what that feels like. Like, we're in a tough space in the economy right now. So how could I offer my expertise to my friend? Just checking in, like I checked in on them recently, like, how are you doing? And, they were speaking to me about, I don't know if this entrepreneurship thing is meant for me. And I've known this person for a while, and I know this is something that they care about. And I'm thinking, how can I support them in this moment? And so what I said to them is, I said, I think it could work. It might be a strategy thing. So how about we hop on a call and we could brainstorm this out together? And I'm just like, how can I show up for my friend in that moment? Because I can imagine what they're going through. And it's not like I'm like, send you an invoice, none of that. It's like, how can I support that person? And no charge. It's just being and showing up for someone. So it could be as small as that, and you don't know what that can mean to someone. So now, with that being said, talking about follow-up. So it's okay to make the first move. So I just feel like we're in this time in the world where everyone seems to be on this main character energy thinking. And I think that's great, but I also think sometimes that could be a thing that hinders a lot of people. So it's this thinking around, if they don't talk to me, if they want to talk to me, they better reach out to me. But I think that I don't think that's the best approach. I believe that showing that you're actually interested goes a long way. So I think it's important in business to make the first move, because it's so easy to go to an event or connect with someone else just to collect information and business cards, and then you never do anything with it. So what could happen is, years down the road, you might think, dang, I wish I had connect with that person, or I wish I would have put more effort into connecting with so-and-so. So I advise, after you meet someone, it's important to follow up, make the first move. So how do you do this? Something as simple as sending a thank you note. So after meeting someone, send a thank you email or a message to express your appreciation for the conversation. So you can mention something specific that you discussed, and that can make it more personal. And then you want to schedule a follow-up meeting. And this is something that I'm doing. Like, I'm back in this scene and I'm doing all of these things. So I'm telling you the things that I'm doing. So scheduling a follow-up meeting. So if you had a particularly good conversation with someone, suggest a follow-up meeting over coffee, or it could be a virtual chat. And this can help you really deepen the relationships. And some people might think, okay, how often am I following up with this person? Like, I just spoke with someone and we just agreed to let's follow up quarterly. There are certain people I follow up with every month. There are certain people I follow up with every other week. But it's whatever works for you. And it's just checking in, catching up. You're not asking for anything all the time. Most times you're not. It's just genuinely building those connections. And then you want to stay in touch. So keep in touch periodically by sending some updates. So sharing relevant articles or simply checking in. Like someone I talked to like last month, they just sent me some YouTube videos to watch. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to check these out. So this really keeps you on their radar. This kept that person on my radar, and it shows that you are interested in maintaining the connections. So this was something initially, to be honest, I struggled with, and I just asked people, I'm like, how are you maintaining connections? And these were some of the tips that was given to me as well. So I've been using and implementing them for myself. And I believe that by following these strategies, you will be able to build those authentic connections that are mutually beneficial and can lead to long-lasting relationships in your business journey. So networking, I believe it doesn't have to feel like a chore or a superficial exercise. And when it's done with intention and authenticity, it becomes a powerful tool for growth and success. Okay, so next, let's get into being intentional in this process. So being intentional with your networking can make a huge difference. So when I first started Black to Business, I was very intentional about the types of events I attended. So I made sure I was in rooms where my audience was. So for me, that meant attending a lot of Black focused events. So for you, your audience may or may not be the same, but the key is you want to go where your audience is. For example, if your target audience is tech entrepreneurs, attend tech conferences and meetups. If your audience is local business owners, attend some community business events. The goal here is to be present where your potential clients and collaborators are. So when people start thinking of Black-owned businesses or Black business events, they thought of me. And this kind of association is truly powerful because it meant that when opportunities arise, your name is the first that comes to mind. So I remember attending a networking event specifically geared towards Black entrepreneurs. And at that event, I connected with several key people who later became instrumental in my journey. And by being in the right rooms, you increase your chances of meeting the right people and forming valuable connections. And it's all about being strategic and intentional with your time and energy, especially if you are managing maybe a job and your business, or you're busy in your business. You really have to be strategic and intentional about where you spend your time. It's also important to remember what people will remember about you. Networking isn't just about meeting people. It's about making an impression. So are you the person who shows genuine interest? Are you the person that offers value? Are you the person that follows up? Or are you the person who just collects business cards and never reaches out? How you present yourself and the effort that you put into maintaining connections will determine the quality of your network. So moving into overcoming these negative connotations about networking. So it's true that networking often gets this bad rap because many people associate it with being fake or using others for that personal gain. But it doesn't have to be that way. by focusing on building these genuine relationships, you can really overcome these negative perceptions. So when I first started attending networking events, I felt out of place. But I realized that by being authentic and true to myself, I could build real connections. People responded to my sincerity and my openness, and that's how I started to see the true value of networking. So networking isn't just about attending formal events. There are also various ways to build your network. So let's talk about that. So one, you want to go to in-person events. That might be conferences, seminars, and local meetups are great for face-to-face interactions. Or another way to network might be online events. So like LinkedIn, virtual events, and also social media groups can connect you with the right people. And these people can be people in your local community, or they can be people from around the world. Another type of event networking, or another type of networking might be informal networking. So that could be some coffee chats, some casual meetings, and even social gatherings can be that opportunity for you to network. But most importantly, I think the key is to be open to these different methods and find what works best for you. So I found that a mix of these approaches work best for me. So for example, I've made some great connections through LinkedIn by engaging in meaningful conversations and really sharing valuable content. And another place that I'm really on lately and people sleep on is Facebook groups. So honestly, that's the social platform I spend a lot of time on these days when it comes to building relationships and connections. Facebook groups, I am in there commenting, offering value, and also I'm in there asking questions because people are really helpful on these Facebook groups. So don't sleep on Facebook. I know they say that's for the other people, but it's also a good place for business. So yeah. So now we've covered all of these things. I want to wrap up with, again, networking is about building these genuine connections that can lead to personal and professional growth. And you have to be authentic. You have to be intentional and really don't shy away from making the first move. And remember, every meaningful connection starts with a simple hello. And I'd love to hear what you thought about this episode, your networking experiences, what's working for you, maybe sharing some tips with us. So feel free to send me a DM on Instagram at Black to Business to let me know your thoughts and what's working for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and shout out to you for showing up for yourself and learning. And I can't wait to see you back here next week. But in the meantime, keep building and keep pushing the culture forward. Later.